If you've ever grabbed the remote and turned on the TV, passed over an iPad, or even given up your phone for your child to be able to get through a meal using screens, this episode is for you. I'm going to talk about why and how we've gotten to this point where we're using screens to distract and get children through meals. What does the research tell us about how this might be affecting their bodies and how they're registering and eating, as well as my recommendations as a feeding therapist and what we can do so this doesn't become a long term habit or necessity, because I don't feel like any parents really want that to happen. So let's jump in. This is the Airplane Spoon podcast. Real questions and real stories about feeding children. I'm Sarina Murrell, a feeding therapist and the director of the Airplane Spoon. And every week, I bring up a question that is very common from families that I support around feeding. This might be related to babies or toddlers or school age or older children. But all of it is the idea of how do we help our children to eat, not just more volume, not just better nutrition, but to be successful independently and to enjoy the process. So today's question is, should screens be a part of mealtime? Or is it okay that I use screens to get through mealtime with my child? And just think about that for a second. To get through mealtime. We don't use that terminology if we're talking about something that is enjoyable. We don't say, like, we're going to get through this movie or we're going to get through Disneyland. So there's already a negative association there just to say to get through a meal because something is hard. Something is not working out the way that we're expecting it to be for it to be calm and enjoyable and consistent. So we're utilizing different strategies to help to make it more tolerable to get through it. And I'm here and I want to talk to you today that it doesn't have to be that way. And I've got some strategies. But first, I want to talk about why do parents reach for screens? So let's start here because it matters. A parent's number one priority is that their child eats at any cost. And if there are things that can happen to make them eat more, essentially, then those are going to be utilized if without those, it's a bigger struggle. I get it. We're trying to find strategies that help, but these are often short-term band-aids that are not addressing a bigger underlying issue. And they turn into habits, which means long-term. We didn't want to get there. We just started using it, and then all of a sudden we have to use it. Have you been there? There's so many parents that I support that are there. And I want to say that there's no judgment. I understand how parents get there. They're worried that they want their child to eat. And they've tried lots and lots and lots of different things, and they wasn't working to get them to eat, but then the screen got them to eat. And that might be meaning them feeding themselves, or they're fully tuned out, enthralled in the screen, and somebody else is feeding them, and they will accept that. So when I do a feeding evaluation with a new family, I go to the home and I say, I want to know what feeding looks like right now. I don't want you to change anything. I want to see what it looks like exactly as it is, to then see where are the strengths and where are some of the challenges. And I tell them if that means that they're sitting in front of the TV or sitting in front of an iPad and that's how it looks, that's fine. I want to see that. So I can give them a no judgment permission if that's what it really looks like. And the reason why this question comes up is that parents know that there is something a little bit not okay with that. This isn't what they really want. And so they're already feeling some sort of a judgment and that they don't want to be there. How did they get there? But in my role, that's not my job to judge parents if they are doing something that they feel they have to do in order to help make sure that their child is fed. Okay, their child is fed. That's good. We want children to eat. But my job is to help, give strategies, support so that that doesn't have to be a necessity. That doesn't have to be a crutch that without that, the whole meal falls apart. So if this is you and you feel like you have to hurry, get the iPad. You pull up the show, you pull up the screen, you put it there, plop it down, and maybe you're not even thinking about it now. It's just so second nature that you get the plate, you get the food, you grab the iPad, set them up, boom. And that's what a meal looks like. First of all, you're not alone and you haven't broken anything. And this is something that can change. But change requires some different actions to turn into new habits. Just like this didn't happen, and then certain actions made it a habit. For that to look differently, there's other actions that need to happen. It doesn't need to be just an all or nothing. You don't just throw the iPad in the trash and be like, no, you can't do it anymore. And there's a couple of brain science reasons why, and some more of the research. So let's jump into what the research has said around screen time. We know that there's a lot of concerns around the type of shows, the constant access, the change, high colors, high sound, movement. And that is flooding our brain system for processing, and our neurochemicals, specifically dopamine, are being overactivated, overused, and it leaves our systems dysregulated. And when that happens, a child is going to be more likely to have big emotional upsets. You've seen this before. I'm sure I've seen it all the time. A child is looking at the phone, looking at the tablet, the screen, and then the parents like, okay, we're done. And they pull it away. And then, wah! That's not just a normal tantrum. That is also because of the dysregulation of the hormones in the brain, and also because of how much attention and processing that this is taking. The child has lost really awareness and sight of the real world. And we've all had this happen to us. We get enthralled, we get sucked in, and we're looking at this, and we're not listening or even aware of anything else that's going on around outside of us. Okay, there could be conversations happening over here. Our brain's not processing that. We're here. There could be people walking by. I'm not even processing that. I'm here. And here's the thing. The smaller the screen, the less environmental awareness is happening. So just that in itself, what I would say to parents, and this is what I say to them, if a child is looking at a phone during meals, I will say to parents, let's try to switch it to a tablet and move it a little bit further back. The closer it is to the face, the less awareness I have of the world around me. The more distance I have from the face and the device, the more possibility I have for some peripheral processing. And so if it's a tablet and it's a little bit larger, then I'm not going to be as sucked in as if it were a phone. And then if it's a tablet, can we move it to a wall TV? Even though that seems bigger, it's almost a little bit counterintuitive. I get it. It's like a giant screen. but it's far away, and people could even be walking in front of the screen. And there's all this space and room for environmental processing. So, one of the pieces of research that we know is that the smaller the screen, the closer you bring it to your face, and the less awareness you have. So, the first thing in itself is thinking about the screen size. Another thing about screens with feeding that the research points to is that distracted eating, in this case with screens, it doesn't allow us to have a good internal awareness of what's going on in our body, which means that we don't really know how much we've eaten and if we're full or if we're still hungry. And I think we've all experienced this. Think about if you were to go to the movie theater, to the cinema, and you're going to watch a movie on the big screen. Okay. And a lot of times we can get food there. I know it's happened to me. I'll get a big bag of popcorn and you're watching and you're eating and you're eating and you're eating. And that's a lot of popcorn. Sometimes they're like barrels, buckets of popcorn. We do not need to eat that much popcorn. But how is it possible that we actually eat that much popcorn or that much food? Is actually the movie theater business is taking advantage of this distracted eating. That the more distracted we are, the less awareness we have. And if it tastes good, then we are going to want more of that. High salt, high fat, high sugar are going to activate all of those pleasure centers from our mouth to our brain of, I want this, I want more of this. And we keep eating. Sometimes I'm not even the start of the movie and I've finished the whole bag of popcorn. Some of these places have refills, unlimited refills on popcorn, and you go back and you eat more, and you don't actually feel full, even though that's a lot of food. So, this can be happening to our children as well, in both ways. Children, they're if they have feeding challenges and they have stress around food, most likely what is happening is that the brain chemical hormone cortisol, which is our stress hormone, is being released more around mealtime. And cortisol shuts off hunger and digestion, which tells the child, do not eat. It's not safe to eat, that they feel that something is wrong, that there's danger, that it's bad. And so when we distract and we pull them into a pleasure moment of enjoyable video that they're watching, a show, then that is going to basically stop the cortisol, the stress hormone, because they have dopamine, the pleasure hormone. And then their brain's not saying don't eat, stop hunger. So they do eat, but they're not aware of it necessarily. They're not understanding how much they eat. And there's some research on this dietary memory that suggests distracted eating interferes with not just how much we've eaten, but how well we eat. There is a higher intake of these highly processed, higher fat, sugar, salt food, and a lower intake of fruits and vegetables. And it's also going to affect us later in the day. If our body and our brain becomes associated that to get the food in, I need to have this other hormone to basically stop the cortisol stress hormone from coming out, it creates a dependency. It creates an expectation in the brain that that's how we set it up. We're very habitual creatures. The more that we do something, the more that our body expects that to be that way. So, screens in themselves, how that's affecting attention, how that's affecting dopamine release and our emotional regulation is one thing, but how it's affecting absorption, how it's affecting, what foods are consumed and how much is another thing. And often there can be this very drastic switch that happens when a child is eating with a screen. If they're eating with a screen and they're in basically kind of like a dazed zone, right? They're so distracted, they're just eating. They're not even aware really of what they're eating. And then sometimes they stop eating, right? And they're just like, and then if you tell them keep eating, they might keep eating. Or this is when parents or adults might come in and help them to eat. But as soon as their attention comes off of this for a second, what's going to happen is a flooding. So if they're pulled away, let's say there's like a big sound over here, maybe there's like a fire alarm or a police siren or something like that, and they look away and then they see their food and and they don't want it because the cortisol came back. It's there. And as soon as that happens, and because of all the dysregulation of these high input, it's going to be that much more likely to have this kind of big reaction. Has that happened to you? All of this is not on the child's own decision. They're not just choosing to have this big reaction. It's very directly correlated to their brain chemicals. And I want you to understand that because we can do something as the adults in this child's life to support that so it doesn't have to be so drastic. It's like a roller coaster ride. It's like a ton, little, a ton, little. And that's a lot of kind of preparation or bracing yourself that is something going to happen like that for the child and the family. And if feeding is like this, that's those are all signs of pointing to that there needs to be some changes to help so that this doesn't have to be in this very high tense. We don't really know how well this is going to go, and we have to use all of these other setups to actually just get through it. Remember that word? We're trying to get through it. It's not enjoyable in itself. It's not consistent and predictable. It's not calm, regulated, positive experience for anybody. And even more so for the parents and caregivers. The child's just in their little distracted world. And parents are setting this all up so that it just doesn't explode, basically. So, some of the research is largely correlational. We don't have all of the research to tell us how, using a screen for one meal, that's not necessarily going to create a permanent problem. But consistency with anything that you do, there's enough research and evidence across studies that it's worth taking a serious look at how you're setting up meals and thinking about some decisions or some actions that you can start to take. And let me share some of those with you. But I want to think about before where I stand with screens. And I think I've alluded to it a little bit here. What does success at the table actually mean? This is the piece where priorities and definition of success are very confused or they're not clear for all parties. What I mean by that is child and family or feeding therapist. Parents are looking at volume mostly. How much do they eat? That's always first. And then what do they eat? So wanting them to eat a good quantity and then wanting them to eat more healthier, nutritious choice foods is the win at the moment. And so if we can win because they ate their full meal or they ate their vegetables when they're in front of the screen, there's a peace of mind for families there that they did eat. But it's not just about calories or nutrition going in. Feeding is an internal, external, personal, and social experience. If I don't have internal awareness of what's going on in my body, I don't feel full, I don't feel hungry, I have very, very dysregulated chemicals that are going on in my brain because of how my body is feeling about this or how I'm being distracted. Internal. If externally, how is it set up? Like, is it away? Is it in its own space? Is it with the screen? Is it somebody feeding me? Am I feeding myself? Am I by myself? Am I with others? Nobody's talking to me. It has to be very, very quiet, distracted. Or everybody's eating their own thing, or parents are not eating at the table. Child has to eat. All of those things are part of successful feeding. It's not just that they ate. Because we need to think about the long term. We need to think about when a child is at school. A lot of times, children like these in these situations don't eat at school. And that's really stressful for parents, which means it leads them to taking more drastic decisions like this because they just want to get the food in. But we're setting a child up for dependency and the family up for dependency. And so, if your child is not making any of those decisions themselves of how I choose to get food to my mouth, and it just happens to them. If your child is very negatively associating meals, but you can get them to eat by using screens, all of these are signs that there's probably some underlying issues to look at to help feeding be better because feeding should be enjoyed. Mealtime should be enjoyed. There's a very big difference of using screens for boredom versus using screens as a necessary distraction. The person is bored. Ugh, I'm just sitting here. A lot of times adults do this if they're eating by themselves. They're just sitting there eating. They're bored. So they pull out their phone. That's boredom. That's not necessity. And if a child is bored at a meal, how can adults help with that entertainment or getting through the mealtime moment so that it's enjoyable and it's a shared social experience? Because other thing about eating and meals is that they are supposed to be social in our human aspect of food. And social human development is sharing food together, eating in the same space, having conversations over food, thinking about all of the times that people meet up. Let's go get a coffee. Birthdays have cake or pizza. Weddings have food and cake. And so there's food in shared social celebrations. And food is meant to be social. So, is home time meals a social experience where children can watch and see and model and copy what other people are doing around them as examples? And then have conversations about how was your day? It doesn't have to be about your food. We don't have to talk about our food, about like, oh, this has this vitamin and this mineral. And kids don't really care. They're not thinking about their long term. This is not how kids learn and process. They're just thinking about, does it taste good or not? But we can talk about our day. We can talk about what are we going to do this weekend? We can talk about remembering our vacation. It was so much fun. We can talk. You can also read a book or sing a song, or I think as a last resort, a lot of times I'll say to families is like put on a song that you're not watching it. You can just put on a song and either put the phone down so it's not like a YouTube video, or on a other music app to listen to music. Those are ways to engage at the mealtime, at the family, so the children aren't bored. Okay, that's different than distraction. And I want to be clear about where I stand. I, as a feeding therapist, do not think of screens as a mealtime tool. even a limited one. And my honest ranking is that if the child needs any kind of support for regulation, then we can think about other, right, setting up the environment, making sure that the chair and the table system is good. But it's most often lack of socialization and involvement. There's a lot of time pressure, especially in the mornings. Hurry, hurry, fast, eat, 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 eat. And so it's not on the child, it's on the family to set up meals to be more successful instead of just using a very easy and fast fix to get it in. Again, this isn't a judgment, but parents are saying this because they feel that they don't want this pattern to continue for the rest of their lives. And so, my job is to help. How can we make this less of a dependency? How can we make this more of an enjoyable experience? And sometimes that is looking at what else could be going on. There could be certain types of gut, body, reactions to food, whether that's allergies or food intolerances or absorption or digestion. This often can be related to constipation. Constipation is a huge area for children. If they are not pooping, they don't want to eat. That's just their body. And so that could be an area, internal body. It could also be, do they have very frequent, especially sinus illnesses? They're always kind of mucusy. They've got ear infections. They're breathing through their mouth. Our mouth is our backup breathing choice. And so if they can't breathe through their nose because they're always kind of mucusy, it's going to make eating a lot harder. And all of these could be something that a feeding therapist could look at to try to determine what is the root cause for why is feeding so challenging for this child. If they have got sensory differences, there's ways that we can adjust food so that it can be more positively accepted. You can use, instead of a fresh strawberry, could it be a frozen strawberry? Could it be a pureed applesauce strawberry? Could it be a freeze-dried strawberry? There's ways we can modify food and have the texture and the sensory experience be more well received. So, this isn't about being rigid. It's about understanding where your child's attention, brain chemicals and hormones, uh, distraction necessity versus boredom. And so, how can we set up meals to be a more positive or neutral to positive, socially set up and modified to set up your child for success experience? If it's hard, your child's going to avoid it. This is a human nature reaction. If every time you had to do something it was hard, you wouldn't want to do it. So your child is telling you something is hard. So how can we help them so that it's not so hard, that it gets to be easier, they have success, and then they look forward to it and they enjoy it? If this resonates with you to want to make a change, don't try to just overhaul your entire day and change the entire thing. You can pick one meal. Often dinner is the easiest since it's usually the one that's most consistent at home. There's less of a time rush. You could start there. You could start on the weekend if you just wanted to pick one weekend meal and think about, what is the routine? What is the habits or the actions that could help be successful? Not just volume, not just, you know, nutrition, but that child's decision, that child's ability, and that drive to want to eat as the measures of success. And then make it a ritual. And then once that's successful, you can add in more. If it starts with one meal on the weekend, that went really well. Maybe next weekend you could do 2 meals. If that went well, and keep it. Then could you add in one weekday dinner? Maybe it's a Friday night, so it's not like so stressful with work the next day, and just add from there. It doesn't have to be all at once. It doesn't have to be a drastic, we're going to change everything, because most often that doesn't work. But if this is something that you are not wanting to be a lifelong or a crutch or this super, super stressful, we have to have it set up this way or else my child will not eat, take a small action. You can do this. Take a small action, okay? There's no perfect mealtime. And this isn't a rule that you have to enforce with yourself. It's a guidance, it's a direction that you're leaning towards to move towards positive and enjoyable meals that are shared together with your family. So remember, you're doing an amazing job supporting your child on their feeding journey. You've got this. Love, enjoy, and eat.